Hi, this is Danielle on the marketing team with Shane Rice. We are going to go through our Google Analytics properties because I'm new to the marketing team and I just got Google Analytics access on Friday. I'm so stoked. So for anyone else who's watching on YouTube later on, Shane is the person you can reach out to if you've got questions, but a walkthrough here should give you a pretty good overview of what we're tracking. So it is May 2020. So of course things change all the time in marketing. So if you're watching this 6 months later, it may be out of date. So take it away, Shane.
Yeah, thanks, Danielle. So high level overview, we use Google Tag Manager 360 and Google Analytics 360 to help us measure activity on about.gitlab.com and docs.gitlab.com, a couple other subdomains as well. So what I'm going to do today is just share my screen and share what we do in Google Tag Manager to start and just kind of take you through the general flow. So let me share my screen now. All right, cool. So here's what we have in Google Tag Manager. So in Google Tag Manager, you have tags, you have triggers, and you have variables. Variables are stored values. So like we take our Google Analytics property ID and add that as a stored value in variables, for example. I have lookup tables, things like that for custom events that help us minimize the number of tags we have to make it easier to manage this. And but just looking at tags here, you can see, we have tags for our analytics set up with Google Analytics. We also have tie-ins to our ad platforms so we can measure conversions from our advertising. One of the things I wanted to focus on here was our custom event structure. So what we use Marketo forms, and I found that when we had the default tracking turned on, we weren't capturing 100% of those form fills. And best I can guess is that the forms are not bubbling up through the DOM correctly to Google Tag Manager. And so because of that, I just added custom events. So whenever somebody successfully fills out a form, a custom event fires for that. And so what I have done is, instead of like having one custom event name and then breaking out the type of event based on a URL or some other category, I just set all of the custom events to match the offer. So demo, trial, resources, webcast, whatever it is. That way we can see that in Google Tag Manager and then pass that along to Google Analytics without too much worrying about something breaking because somebody moves a URL or something like that. As long as all of the JavaScript stays the same, it'll fire the custom event. It'll get picked up by Google Analytics. And so that was one of the highlights I want to point out. And then in the agenda doc, and I can pull it up on screen if you like, but basically what we do is I just grabbed an example of the JavaScript that we use. So, form on success, and then we do a data layer push. And then Brandon Lyon helped me kind of fix something that I didn't know to do, which is, add the event callback to kind of close the loop there. So that's a really high level overview of our most critical part of Google Tag Manager. And so since I'm sharing my screen here, I will just quickly show you what we see in preview, and we'll fill out, let's say, we'll go to resources and fill out something there.
Shane, can I ask you a question about this step?
Please do.
So whenever a new campaign gets created, does this mean that because the Marketo forms don't kind of reveal themselves to the DOM, that this code has to be added to every form that we create? So like if we make a new landing page, is this a step that happens, or kind of how do you make sure that all the forms we have are properly tracked?
Yeah, so that is a step that happens. And so with the digital team, have worked with them to, make sure they know to add this. And then I also typically QA anything before it goes live for paid advertising specifically to make sure that we're capturing this. So, it's as simple as, let me turn on the preview here. Just a second. All right, we're going to.
And I have to admit, I haven't read the entire marketing handbook yet, but is this in there if I go there later?
Yes. Yeah. So the data layer events are in the marketing ops section of the handbook. And then the event structure is in our section of the handbook. And so I've added that there. So basically I made the events so that they were semantically grouped into categories by what we're offering. And then, so that's a category is, trial, demo, resources, and then actions to describe what somebody's actually doing on the site. So click, submit, like, so we can see when somebody's clicking on navigation and when somebody's clicking on a CTA versus when they're submitting a form. And then the event label is where I kind of packed a bunch of data in that we could then split out in Google Sheets. But I did that because when we had the free version of Google Analytics, if you start adding secondary dimensions, it starts sampling data really quickly. And so it still samples data in the interface, but we have unsampled data that we can download now. We have a certain number of credits per month that we can use.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're revamping those events so that they're a little easier to understand at first glance in the interface without having to go in and like triage everything and split it all out and do the pivot table.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, of course. All right, great. Now we have the preview running. So this is just showing us what tags are firing on this page. And then we'll just fill out this form. And then I use this email address because I've signed up with it before, and not Gmail, GitLab. So it doesn't add a new entry into the database.
Cool.
I agree to the privacy policy. And so when we click here, what we should see on the summary over here is we should see the webcast events come up since this is in the webcast folder. And yep, so that webcast event fires, and then that triggers Google Analytics to get a form event, Bing custom, all these other ones to see that event occurring if we have any paid advertising related to that.
Cool.
So that's Google Tag Manager and how it works for us. So
for someone who's watching who doesn't really know like what you said about paid advertising, can you just like speak just briefly about like if we wanted to run an ad campaign against that page, for example, and send people there, kind of what would this enable us to do there?
Yeah, so what that enables us to do is to say, okay, so we spent X amount of dollars on this platform to get people to this page. And then when they got to that page, how many of those people actually submitted their information so that we could have a conversation with them about getting started with GitLab. And so they can, talk to somebody in sales, or we can start communicating with them in a drip email sequence to help activate them. But then also it allows our team to then go to the broader marketing team and say, hey, this page on this platform delivered these results. So it's really about helping us make sure that, what we're doing is effective and we're spending our money in ways that returns pipeline.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course. And so Google Analytics, you've used it before, so I'm not going to get super into like, the high level stuff that I know you know how to use. If we want to cover that just for the video, I'm more than happy to do that, but I thought I would focus on events specifically.
Yeah, you do a custom setup for events?
Sort of, yeah. So so we have event categories here, and some of this is not something that we can control through Google Tag Manager. So demand base, like they create a bunch of labels and actions that I have no control over. Same thing for drift. But we do have like say navigation. We can come into this and see, okay, so this many people clicked on main part of the nav. We also have that use case drop down in the product section. So I broke that out so we could see that at a high level here.
Nice.
And then we can also go to event label. And then this is where we see, so this is the page somebody's on, the first entry here. And then you have a pipe. And then the empty section between the two pipes there is normally for a refer. So if somebody searches on Google or comes to us from some other referral source, that will show up in this spot right here normally. And then you can see what text they clicked on, what the click class was, so the CSS of that class they clicked on, and then the target, the place they wanted to go. So this is what I'm talking about. Like it's really rich. There's a lot of data here, but to really make it useful, I've got to do a lot of triage on it.
So I just ask a couple questions about what I'm seeing to make sure I'm understanding before we keep going. Yeah, so obviously it looks like a huge percentage. So this is traffic from May 4th to now, May 4th to May 10th, for context, right? Yep. And so a huge percentage of the people coming to this is our front page are just going to sign in. Yep. It looks like. So 62% are using that top right sign in link. and it looks like maybe the refer for the second row is Google.
Yep.
So and then they're going from Google. So they probably like typed GitLab into Google or something,
Hmm.
clicked through. Is that right? Am I understanding correctly?
That's right. I would say that the empty pipe, where you don't see a refer, that's going to get counted as direct traffic.
Right.
And so, there's a percentage of that we know is going to be coming from Google. That for some reason, Google's not, tracking that that referral and getting that into Google Analytics. So we know that like there's some dark, like referral traffic in
Right.
that direct.
And that would be social media, right? Like if they're coming from a client or on mobile, we might not see it as well, right?
Yep, that's right.
Cool. Just for the audience's benefit so they understand. Like that's the fun part of marketing. You always have the mysterious bucket of people that, don't track. But
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
look a little further down here. So the third one is register, which is great. Looks like that's about 1.5% of the traffic. And I've been guessing there's some other, can we filter by just the word register or actually, can we filter by sign up, sign dash up?
yeah.
Just curious roughly what our traffic conversion rate is. Cool. So I guess
Let's see.
we've got some sign in here stuff. So
Yeah, let me set this modifier so it's exactly matching instead of regex. That's not right.
too strict. Let's
Yeah.
see. It looks like we use the sign up link for sign in. So that's probably
Yeah.
part of the struggle.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's just look at registry then.
cool. That's probably relatively good. Other than maybe that second. Oh yeah. Okay, cool. So of the total, this was a little less than 1%. It looks like if we look at total events, is that right?
That's right.
Cool. So, I mean, like for a very simple rule of thumb, we could use, I think it'd be fair to say if someone goes, Danielle, roughly what percentage of the traffic coming to our website converts to a new sign up at any given time? I could say, well, roughly 1%, a little bit less than 1%.
Well, I would say we can't really say that about traffic. We can say that about number of interactions. About 1% of the interactions
That's
in
a
the
good point.
are leading to that register
So was
action.
this scoped to click events from the beginning when we were looking at this? This wasn't actually all traffic, it was all events. Sorry. That's
Yeah.
my.
No,
Okay.
it's
So of the interactions, so this is good because we need these like little things to hold in our minds, right? Because it helps us kind of take something really complex and make it simple. So of the interactions that happen on our website at any given time, about 1% of them are people going to the first step of the sign up process. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they completed it, right?
that's right. Yeah. So we don't have any Google Analytics tracking on GitLab.com.
Right.
So anytime we send someone there, we register that event as something to track on our side to say, hey, that's successful for us. But
Mhm.
then they do have to continue on in GitLab.com at that point.
And so do we know what our success rate is? Do we get a call back when that form is submitted?
No, not right now.
Okay.
Uh, One of the things, and I'm going to get to this in just a second with Google Analytics 360, but since we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and talk about it now. We have this opportunity to integrate Salesforce.com and Google Analytics so that when we add some hidden fields to forms that will then pass that information to Salesforce. And so Salesforce will then say, okay, so here's the client ID, which is an anonymized, like it doesn't have any kind of PII in it and no IP address or anything like that. So here's a client ID, and then this client ID has moved from a contact to a lead. Well, then that will send that information back to Google Analytics, and we'll be able to see how many of those events are leading to not just a contact but a lead, and then how many of those leads are moving to opportunities.
Right.
It'll help us close some of the reporting loops around some of the questions we have about what's happening with these direct visitors or these visitors from specific ad platforms.
Yeah,
So that's
exactly what I was wondering. I mean, the first question I had was even more basic. It was just like, what's the success rate from starting the form to finishing it?
yeah.
Do we know that right now? Or do we have a way of seeing that?
No, we can't. But so to get Google Analytics 360, we have to work with a partner, a Google partner, who then sells that to us. We don't go directly to Google, and so they are going through and helping us revamp our event model so that we can be able to track some of these kind of additional levels of activity.
Yep.
So we're moving all of the separate categories into kind of consolidated categories. So like form, CTA. Um, so those get consolidated there, and then we're going to have the actions are going to say, okay, so start a form, submit. They hit a thank you page, like they registered on Marketo or they downloaded something. So you can actually see that completion level with that form category. You'll see the completion level there, and then you'll be able to go into form type and see, okay, so I want to see demo, or I'm sorry, you'll go to event label, and that's where we'll have the form type for demo, events, free trial. And so that'll give us some of that granularity where we can actually say, so this many people started free trial, this many people completed it. We know that our attrition rate is this. So
Mhm.
what can we do to improve conversion?
Yeah, that's kind of, so I guess what I can do if I want to back into it today is I know how many people signed up for a GitLab trial in a given period, and I know how many people, entered one of these pages. It's not perfect, but I can like back into it from would you say that's a reasonable, like if I was going to just baseline somehow, could I just do that and then try to make that number move as a short-term fix? Or do you feel like it's actually really not helpful because of the fact that like the same person could attempt to complete the form more than once?
I mean, there's always going to be edge cases on this. I think of the data we get here as a painting and not a picture. It's
Yeah.
really giving us an idea of what's happening. It's not like giving us a crystal clear like view into every interaction.
Okay.
Uh, so I would say it's helpful in that it gives us a target that we can shoot for. And then if it's not moving the needle how we anticipate, then we can always go back and look at that picture or that painting again and say like, so what actions could we take to maybe change this?
Cool.
Um,
That's great.
but based on what you said, I think that's completely reasonable. I think the challenge there is that it is a very manual process. Like it's going to be something where one of us is going to have to go in and pull all the data and then triage it ourselves, and um, hopefully we'll get to a point where it becomes less manual and becomes a lot easier to track these kind of things.
Mhm.
But right now, it's very manual.
Okay. That's really helpful. By the way, I
And
know I'm kind of slowing us down from getting through everything you wanted to cover here. We can totally do another jam session like this. So, since we have about 5 minutes left, what do you think is the most important thing to show me in the time we've got remaining?
yeah, so I'll just move to the kind of final like the final place where a lot of this information comes up, which is Data Studio. Because we have Google Analytics 360, we are working with the data team to connect um, Google Analytics to BigQuery and then that to the data warehouse so we can get this information into Sisense. But I still think that Data Studio is going to have a lot of value for us from um, a research perspective. It gives us the ability to look at data and then kind of filter it out and dive in and do some additional um, improvements. And so I think just really quickly what we can do with Data Studio. So you look here, APAC, so I went and created like all of our regions as specific filters for Data Studio. So I can filter out traffic by region and say, so what's happening in APAC? And then I can also go here and I can add filters to say, okay, so I don't want to see, let's pull out the homepage and let's see what's happening in these other places of the website for this region. It'll take it a second because it's building this out. It's going to, I think it's going to sample. We'll see. Sometimes it samples data in Data Studio. But the good thing about Data Studio is that it tells you it's sampling, whereas Google Analytics doesn't tell you it's sampling data anymore. They used to tell you that, but they don't now.
This is awesome. Will you share this dashboard with me?
Yeah, it's public to anybody at GitLab. So it's actually, I'm pretty sure it's listed in the growth marketing section. We have a list of active dashboards, and this one should be there.
So I think I'm in a weird state because of being on Meltano before, so I don't see any of that stuff. So maybe there's something you need to add me to, or maybe
Okay.
I ask ops. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Let's take a look at that.
Mhm.
So anyway, so this is APAC overall web traffic for last month, excluding the homepage. So like we can see that the traffic's down a little bit over that. I mean, it's not really a surprise with everything that's happening in the world,
Yep.
but it's a specific like region view to say, hey, this is why traffic is kind of down here. And this has been useful at times. So whenever we've seen like overall web traffic has dipped, then we can go into regions and then say, okay, so looking at regions, is there a dip in a specific region? Is there a reason why that's happening? And that's led us to some conversations around like improvements we can make for you know, specific walkthroughs and use cases in regions, especially EMEA, when it comes to GDPR and how we present, like cookie acceptance and those kind of things, because that is impacting our ability to know what's happening there. So yeah, so that's kind of a really quick overview of Data Studio. At this point, we do have a few minutes left. Do you have any questions or anything you want to see specifically out of the things we've shared?
No, I think I would love to just dig around in this dashboard, and I think I'll probably come to our next session with more questions. Definitely want to start looking at kind of content specific insight, especially like if we can figure out categories of content that tend to do well that we can double down on. And I'd love to bring Erica Lindberg into that conversation. So maybe we'll do like a three-way jam to dive into that next time.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think a lot of times in those instances, like Google Analytics is the place to start.
Okay.
And then we can always build out what we want to repeatedly, we want to see repeatedly in Data Studio. So yeah.
I love that we use Data Studio. I mean, obviously, I was working on Meltano, which is sort of in the same vein, and I think it's just very powerful to be able to have those reports automatically generate, so you don't have to remake the same slides a million times. So stoked you've already set so much up there.
Yeah, thanks. So thinking about it, I do have to do the marketing metric slides today. And so in that dashboard, I did break out some of the traffic to only report about .gitlab.com. And we were talking last week, and you said you really think we should just probably report on everything in the property. Are you okay with transitioning the slides for this month to, include docs, or do you want to still break it out just by about?
Let's still break it out just for continuity's sake, because I think it'll be confusing to people who've been watching for a while. But let's maybe add docs as something we want to look at. It doesn't have to be for this report today, because I feel like I don't want to add to your plate, but I want to start giving docs love. So I want to be able to see, like, if we give it love, does it get better? So It would be great to maybe have a separate place where we just report some very basic metrics on docs as we start to make improvements.
Yeah, I would say that docs is really a stronghold for especially for organic traffic. And it really buoys everything else. And so one of the reasons why I broke it out is because I wanted to be able to say, like, hey, we've got a problem on about, or we need to look at what's happening with about in this region. So that's kind of the reason why I did break it out separately for this call specifically, the marketing metrics. So anyway,
as we're looking at all of it, it doesn't all need to be consolidated. I just want to make sure that nothing is like just out there getting traffic, getting meaningful traffic, and just kind of not being monitored at all. So it sounds like you're monitoring it. So that's kind of all I could ask for.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. This was fun. Thank you. I'm so excited to dig in. I will have more questions for you next time. I'm just still getting my bearings. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to help. And any questions you have between now and then, just shoot them my way.
All right. Well, have a great day, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you, Danielle.
Bye.